Hi everyone, and welcome to today's QLITAN with Kubo, our regular networking event that gathers startup community to talk about trending topics under the sun. I am Nelly Clarete, serving under the strategy and partnership team of Kubo, also your host for tonight. And I hope everyone tuning in right now, whether you're tuning in from Facebook or YouTube, is enjoying this chill but humid weather. As we're talking about the weather, today's segment will talk about the Philippine startup climate and whether the country can be conducive to either camels or unicorns. And if you're new to the startup world, no, we are not talking about actual camels or unicorns. We use this term as a business metaphor to explain unique or rare business ideas that make a lot of money, like unicorns, and businesses that are able to survive with the bare minimum, aka camels. So our panel speakers will elaborate more on this discussion. But before I introduce them, let me just quickly run through our event guidelines and a quick Google introduction. As always, if you're watching us on Facebook and YouTube, please share this post and tag your friends so that more people can join in the discussion. Please also send in your questions and feel free to share your insights in the comment section below. And also, as the name implies, this is a kulitan, so we do encourage both our panelist speakers and our viewers to be makulit with us. So please don't be shy in the comment section below. We would also love to hear from you, so kindly fill in our feedback form so you can see the link on the screen so that we can know more about how we can better improve our programs. All right, and at this point, I'd like to give a short but sweet introduction of Kubo, what we do, and who we are, for those who do not know us yet. So Kubo, like the Bahay Kubo, not QBO, but Kubo, is the Philippines' National Incubation or Innovation Center aimed to develop and support Filipino startups. And we are created through a partnership between our four founding partners, namely Idea Space Foundation, the Department of Science and Technology, or DOST, JP Morgan, and the Department of Trade and Industry. All right. So here at Kubo, we are stage agnostic and multi-sectoral, meaning we accept startups from any stage and from any industry. So whether you're at the ideation stage or maybe you've been running your startup for some time now, we would love to have you part of our community. Right. And as the Philippines National Incubator, we work with both local and international institutions. So next slide, please. That really share the same mission and vision for Filipino startups changing the world. And this is really our grand objective here in Kubo. Of course, for this to be possible, Kubo partners with the public sector, government, with professional service providers, community partners, collaborators, and the international market partners from all over the world. Next slide, please. All right, so Kubo is centered on these three core actions, which is to grow the startup community, to develop startups, and to collaborate with the bigger ecosystem. So how do we do that? Next slide, please. We are able to achieve these three core actions through our various Kubo programs and services. So I'll just briefly run through them. Under our Grow pillar, this is really where we create awareness and we promote entrepreneurship. So we have programs such as roadshows, QLITAN, which we're doing now, basics and boot camps. Under our second pillar, which is develop, this is really where we aim to mature or accelerate the growth of our startups within the Kubo community. So we provide them access to capital, to resources, and expertise through our offered services such as consultations, workshops, delegations, and incubations. And under the third pillar, we have collaborating with the bigger ecosystem. And this is really to explore synergies with corporations, the government, the academia, and other stakeholders. We have programs such as the startup reports and mapping. We have Rescue, which was our program in partnership with Youth Business International, and this highlighted startups responding to COVID-19. We also have the Philippine Startup Week, which is one of our biggest events of the year every November, so more details on that soon. And we also have TBI 4.0, which aims to develop tech business incubators in the Philippines and across the country. And one of the best things about Kubo and our services is that it's all for free. And who doesn't want that? Of course, you know the struggle of business founders. It's very expensive and financially burdensome. So at Kubo, we want to make sure you're well taken care of without any expense on your part. And of course, for this to be possible to offer free services, we can't do it without our partners. And we would like to give a short and sweet shout out to our partners, Job Street Philippines and Youth Business International. Job Street is also offering opportunities with us who are viewing this QLITAN session tonight. So if you're a founder looking for great talent, Job Street is offering free job posting for startups and SMEs with QLITAN. So if you're interested in that, please see the link on the chat. It's also shown on the screen right now to be connected to Job Street. All right, and just to wrap up the short and sweet introduction about Kubo, we go back to the heart and grand mission of this organization, which is to see Filipino startups changing the world. And we here at Kubo, we believe we can only do this through buying hand. So if you want to know more about us, next slide please, do visit our website, our Facebook page, our Instagram, and we're also on LinkedIn. We also hold multiple events every month. We actually release calendar of events every month. So this is our calendar of events for the month of May. So let me just run down on some upcoming events that you guys might be interested in, and I'll make this quick. But starting off with our first opportunity, we have a workshop entitled Creating Content and Effective Engagement Strategies. All right, so this will be held on May 27 from 3 to 4:30. And this workshop is for free and open to the public. So we partnered with Facebook to conduct this customized training session. So if you want to learn more about creating engaging content on your socials, do sign up on the link provided on the screen and also on the chat box below. All right, our second opportunity, next slide please, is the Alibaba Netpreneur Training Program. So this is another exciting opportunity brought to you by Alibaba Business School and Gopi Partners for their first ever Alibaba Netpreneur Training Program in the Philippines. And this is a six-week program designed to equip entrepreneurs with the knowledge and skill to use technology to scale their ventures, which is based on Alibaba's own entrepreneurship journey. So this opportunity is free and open to entrepreneurs who have been operating for 2 years. And again, the deadline is on June 20. So do submit your applications before then. All right. Next opportunity is the Singapore Airlines App Challenge. And they are back with its 7th edition. So we are inviting innovators from all over the world to join forces with SIA to lead change in the aviation and travel industry. So you will have direct collaboration with the Singapore Airlines Group. So don't forget to apply before June 30th. All right, just 2 more announcements. We have the Kubo Entrepreneurial Support survey. So Kubo is conducting a survey to learn more about the needs of startups during the pandemic. And we are circulating the survey, so we would really appreciate receiving your responses. And this is until May 31, Monday. And we will raffle off 300 pesos worth of Grab credits to 50 lucky survey respondents. So if you want a Grab voucher for 300 pesos, do fill in that survey for us until May 31. All right. And the last announcement would be for Startup Pinay. Okay, so don't miss your chance to be part of this community that supports and empowers women founders and leaders to create a more inclusive and diverse startup landscape. So if you want to learn more, we will be posting the Startup Pinay community website on the comment section below. Yeah, so as you can see, there's a lot going on at Kubo, and so we want to make sure that you're part of our community so that you can access all our programs and services. So please do follow us on our socials, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and check us on our website. And at this point, I'd like to call in the president of Idea Space Foundation Incorporation, the organization behind startup support brands Idea Space and Kubo Innovation Hub, Mr. Butch Maley, to give some welcoming remarks.
Thanks, Nelly. I've spent years searching for a Philippine unicorn. In fact, I'm kind of going blind from looking for that unicorn. There are times when I thought I was close, but discovered it was not to be. I'm certain it's coming though. It's just a matter of when. We're also looking for camels, startups that can weather the hard times and pivot to new business models during the pandemic. Today's entrepreneurs are among the most experienced and knowledgeable in the business. With their help, I believe we will find both camels and unicorns here in the Philippines. They're just around the next corner. Thank you all for being here. Let's get on with the show.
All right, thank you so much, Butch, for that warm welcome. And yes, I do agree. It's about the right time to start tonight's QLITAN discussion. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our amazing list of panelists. So starting off with a serial entrepreneur and co-founder of Steer Platform, a no-code operations, digitization, and automation software as service with the goal of enabling business users to build their own digital solutions quickly and easily. Let's all welcome Ara Knightley. Welcome to the show, Ara.
Thank you.
Hello, nice to see you here. All right, let us welcome our second panelist. He is a Chief Executive Officer of AID, a health tech startup which brought us the first home medical platform in the Philippines, and he now leads the company towards the vision of redefining home healthcare for Filipinos while providing more livelihood opportunities for our country's medical professionals. Let's all welcome Paulo. All right, as we're waiting to bring in Paulo in the show, let me call in our third panelist, which is none other. Oh, hello, Paulo. We see you now. Thank you for joining us. All right, and our third panelist is none other than the Executive Director of Cuba Innovation Hub. She advises startups and leads the overall program and business development activities of Cuba and Idea Space Foundation. Let's all welcome Ms. Katrina Chan.
Hi, Nelly. Super happy to be here with our great panel tonight.
Awesome. All right, and of course, for this session, it will be moderated by Carlo Delantar, founding partner of Core Capital, which invests in the next generation of the Philippines' most promising startups. And with that, Carlo, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Kubo, for organizing this. And thank you, of course, to the panel. We have Arup, Paulo, and Kat, of course. And today we're going to talk about growing camels versus unicorns. There's definitely a lot of things that we need to talk about. But here, we are here to have this conversation, especially for the audience that are listening, wanting to understand what's the difference. Why should we care? And I guess I'll start with my opening message, and that the Philippines, home to over 110 million Filipinos living across more than 7,000 islands. Well, the Philippines is known for its people, karaoke, food, white beaches, and culture. The Pearl of the Orient Seas provides a critical workforce globally. OFWs that have shaped labor forces, including frontliners during this pandemic, and a burgeoning PPO tech support for the world. With remittances stopping $30 billion yearly back to the Philippines, government infrastructure support is working in parallel to provide Filipinos with better living standards to be ready for a globalizing world. As of 2021, the COVID pandemic is still in full swing, reaching its inevitable control through a wide vaccination push for the entire global economy to be back on track. Pre and post-pandemic, what has changed in the Philippines? Let's focus on the tech ecosystem. Prior COVID, the literacy and penetration for the digital economy was rising, but at a fairly slow pace. Fast forward to the present, though through different factors, titas, lola allowances to our ayudas are being sent through GCash transfers. E-commerce has grown rapidly through the influx of closed businesses pivoting to online, while being fulfilled by logistics that have created access and convenience during this turbulent time. This occurrence is something our firm has seen happen in China and other parts of Asia, most especially in the world. So the Philippines is in its cusp of a thriving tech ecosystem. government is doubling down in its support towards innovation while the private sector fully commits to digitization. Where do we go from here? For this topic, we talk about camels versus unicorns. Unicorns are a thing of a rarity where a startup reaches $1 billion valuation. However, this has been scrutinized lately due to overvaluation and romanticization of funding rounds rather than solving problems. For this topic, we focus on how our tech ecosystem should be ready for this change post-pandemic. The indicators are there. Let's hear insights from our speakers as we talk about this conversation. So let's start. Arup, you're up first. As someone who has successfully established and grown multiple ventures, what do you usually look out for when establishing your ventures, and what do you think is the secret sauce to sustainability?
That's a very loaded question, and ideally, what I would probably be teaching at my class. But when it comes to doing it, a lot of time it's not always that rational. So my first venture that I jumped into it, which was in 1999 December, just the month I got married also, and in a foreign country, literally at the start of the global meltdown on .com, was totally irrational. So if I am to analyze it on the basis of all the things we teach in the business school and all, I shouldn't have done it. But there you go. We had a great run with that startup for about 8 months, and we were totally broke, and our computers were pulled out by August. And that was the first startup and experience around there. I guess the common thread that has always bound all the different things I have done was trying to stay afloat, because there isn't too much of funding to go by. I mean, the situation is changing today, and the new startups can have the luxury of getting some support, probably initially starting with joining Kubo, and then getting into some other potential projects and all. But for us, at least when we started in 2000, we had to make money soonest possible. So that was the foundation of it. So yeah, I mean, while we started with the same concept as Salesforce.com, and after doing 2 or 3 projects, we became more of a service company, really, because one of the other fact that remains is if you do not have certain level of capital to support you, the service takes over the product, and that's a difficult but fact that has always been there. So if someone does it, at some stage you have to really cut the cord on the service side. So what we did is we started there. Come 2010, 2012, another crisis, and while we had some people available, we did not believe in letting go of people while in the downturn. So what we did is we figured, let's go back to our original dream of building a locally created IP that can cater to the world. For the 10, 12 years by then, we were building IP for companies across the world. And well, after that, we tried about 6 or different startups, and all of them did not reach too far. Finally, Steer, which is what we have been working for last 3+ years, and hundreds of man years have gone in, not hundreds, I don't know, maybe 50 or so man years have gone into it. 15-man team for it feels like hundreds. So, and now we are reaching somewhere. And in this, it's a real product. It's a difficult, complex, real product, but we could do it not because we started by selling our pitch deck and trying to raise money, but by building the first 2 years and bringing the product to market with our service side of the business. So the service side of the business invested nearly $2 million to build what we have built. And then we went to market. We of course applied a lot of the potential learning of lean startup and business model and this and that. And this time it was close to the heart because we wanted to build something that we kind of started trying to build 20 years ago, or 15, 20 years ago, and did not reach anywhere. Because at that time we started building, we were like most of the founders were MBAs rather than techies. We were techies and MBAs, and we said, the power of technology, internet is supposed to enable small to mid-sized business, level the playing field. And CRM seems to be the area to go in. That's why we went in there. But 20 years down the line, we still see most businesses are not automated. We still see they are barely using an accounting system and something else, and that's about it. And more so here locally, right? And sometimes if they do go for something technology and digitization, the only thing they can think of most of the time is buying an ERP and just putting together some small part of it in implementation. So that was the motivation. We saw there was a gap. We saw there was we could not serve the market, even though we had 130, 40 people in the company, and companies were reaching out to us, but we could not serve the local market because their budget, their requirement, everything was not something we could do in a profitable manner as a business. So service was out of question. That's why we went to the no code. That's why I said, okay, let's build something. So yeah, it's a long answer to your question, but I hope it kind of gave you an perspective of the journey.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to unpack, but I'll sort of pull those later during the cross conversations. But I'll bring the mic to Kat now. Kat, what should enablers do in order to support these startups, and how does the merged team of Idea Space and Kubo help with that?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Carlo. Actually, it's very interesting, right? Like, what I've realized is that there's no one way to support startups. Like, everyone is at a different point in their journey, and like people will need different things. What I will say though is that, speaking about camels versus unicorns, like, I guess the Philippines has struggled with in the unicorn front, but I do think we're quite well positioned to do well in the camel front. Like, camels are probably the more popular term now, but like I've heard them been referred to as like ipis startups, kalabaw startups, right? Like, how can startups manage to, and what I can say is that, Filipino founders, they tend to be very passionate about the problems that they're trying to solve, and that they're solving really big, hairy problems too, right? So, and that in an environment that until very recently has been very, very cash strapped, right? Like, I think we find ourselves in a situation where it is almost required that you're kind of scrappy, that you're thinking of cash flow first, that you're, that you can't expect or rely on, just being like, hey, I have a good background, like I'm blah, blah founder, and like people are going to throw money at you, So we're almost used to being in this situation. And in that sense, now that the whole world is sort of just, how do I say this, kind of, now it's becoming a more popular concept, right? Like, I guess people are starting to realize that, hey, like, it might not be totally sustainable to be living in an environment or operating under the assumption that venture funding can take the place of good business fundamentals. So I guess, sorry, like just dialing back on my answer to that and how we can support. On the founder side, I think that's always been our focus, right? You need to build like a business that makes sense, that makes money, and of course, growth and scalability is part of that picture. Of course, capital is the fuel to, and the hype machine, right, is the fuel to kind of growing big startups. But at the end of the day, that has to be, there has to be an underlying foundation of the business itself, right? The unit economics of the business, the of course, the ability to execute of the team. And those are the types of things that incubators and accelerators are able to support founders with. And then I guess, I want to also briefly touch on the investor piece of this, right? There is a spectrum of like sort of bad investment behavior to great, right? And while I think while in many parts of the world, the problem might be the opposite end of the spectrum where they're too fast and loose with the capital. In the Philippines, there is still a sense of, investors tend to be a bit too conservative, or, valuations aren't founder friendly or don't promote growth of startups. So I think for most of the time that we've been operating this ecosystem, that has been, like educating investors in terms of how to make sure that their capital is actually promoting the growth of the company as opposed to holding them back, has been an important focus. But now it's also looking at the other side of it, right? Like making sure that there is that fit between the investors and the founders, and in terms of both their expectations and how they see the company growing. And we can have like a much longer conversation about all of these things, but I guess to summarize, right, like it always helps to have people in the room, especially for first-time founders, which is the case for a majority of Filipino startups, and also first-time investors, to have people in the room that have done this before. And I think that's the biggest value add of organizations like us. And in terms of camels versus unicorns, like starting up is hard, right? So just being able to survive or weather the various sort of storms that come with starting a business, I think, both on the knowledge piece or just the network piece, or just having a sounding board if you are or going through a rough patch, I think that's really where our value add is as an organization. And I will plug at the end of this, but we already spent, I don't know, 10 minutes of that earlier. So
Thanks, Kat. Oh man, while you were just talking about it, a few things came to mind. You definitely have a wealth of experience and taxonomy of what has happened in the tech ecosystem from generation 1, 2, and 3. Now we're heading to 4, right? Post-pandemic.
right.
So there's definitely something we can unpack there later, or maybe some other thing. It would be really cool to also have a topic on investor investee relationship 101, because there's definitely a bridge we need to cross. I guess I'll move to thanks, Kat. I'll move to Paolo now. I think Paolo definitely has a lot of insights here when we're talking about health. Health is definitely the biggest concern right now during the pandemic. So I'd love to ask Paolo, with AID, have your priorities changed from before the pandemic and during? Let's say that the pandemic magically ends. I hope we do. Ends in the next few months. What would be the first 3 things you would do? 3, 4, 5, 100 things, name it.
Yeah. Well, I do wish it ends soon. But to answer your first question, a lot did change for us. Definitely on our metric side, revenue was not part of the metrics pre-pandemic. We did decide to do growth versus profitability, but I realized with growth you need a lot of capital to get it going. You always need to raise funds, and you always have to step on the gas. Last year, a lot of things actually happened to us. Kat, I'm winking. And it actually forced us to be sustainable, to focus on profitability, taking our foot off that gas, and just being reminding ourselves that building a startup is actually building a business more than anything. When we were starting in 2016, 17, I was reading those books like Scale or Die or Move Fast, Break Things. I didn't see any book talking about sustainability, profitability. And we were really just, we could do this. Let's give promos, let's drop our prices, grab all the users we can, and then we'll raise funds. True enough, early part of last year, it didn't happen to us. We weren't able to close. That was pre-pandemic. And because of that and several events, we decided to focus on sustainability or profitability. And we did unfortunately had to downsize. We did change the business model drastically, but it was also our moment to be great during the pandemic. I mean, this app can actually save the Filipinos. So we have to be alive, and we have to provide fast quality, enjoyable service, not marketing, not promos. So true enough, we just focused on that. And we ended the year with an amazing revenue, with no marketing. And happy to say, first time we were profitable. For my 4 years, I'm a first time founder. For that fourth year, we made money. And we were not dependent on fundraising. We were not dependent on other things. And now coming this year, we understand that the height of the pandemic was actually like July or August last year. And we had another spike this year. But we know that COVID testing will become a commodity. You could get that anywhere. Pandemic will stop. But we still see a consistent revenue. And COVID from COVID testing from our end has dropped, not part of our top 3 services. And we're just very grateful for that. And again, we're still running at positive cash. But just to put things in perspective, other competitors out there are racing. And if they're able to race, they could actually grab or dominate the market. But for us, like any camel, I guess the right time will come. Camels can run fast too, right? In the right time, can drink water fast too. But for now, we're focused on fast, quality, enjoyable service. And for us, that's our North Star. And that will give us our profit in the next coming months. Now, in the next coming months, so what's our plan? A lot of things. We hope that this camel can run fast again. But learning from the past, we believe that we're also wiser. We won't just go and throw in promos wherein our cost of sales are just as much as our revenue, where we make nothing. We're smarter, and we're ready to pivot our services to other home care services. Definitely, we believe that how Filipinos will look at getting healthcare is through home as top of mind rather than going clinic or hospital. And we want to provide that in the next couple of years. That's it for me.
Thanks, Paulo. Really, really inspiring. The fact that, thank you for at least existing during this time. There's definitely a need for your services now. And it really shows
I'm alive.
And also the fundamentals, right? I think hopefully the audience that are listening, they could, take notes on the insights of, that mindset, right? The bootstrap mentality with the growth mindset, they work hand in hand. But the real question is the chicken and egg situation. I guess now we'll go straight to a more organic fireside chat. There's a lot of questions that have been listed down, but as much as we can, let's answer all of them. So please feel free to unmute, answer it if you want. But let's start with the big elephant, or I guess we could call it a big camel or unicorn in the room, right? Why should startups in the Philippines try to be a camel rather than a unicorn? And I guess before you answer that, mind you, I think when we say camels and unicorns, I'd love to hear your insight, what it means to you, right? As a VC, the way I see it is a camel could become a unicorn, right? If you have the right fundamentals, you've actually created something that's creating solutions to the problems at hand. So whoever wants to start, please.
Okay, let me then pick it up since no one is saying anything yet. The definition for me is probably, maybe it makes more sense when you talk about B2C segment where a lot of unicorns are built out of hype and just user count rather than revenue. Like companies like Twitter literally grew to billions of dollars, or Instagram grew to billions of dollars of valuation without any revenue. Now, that is probably mostly possible for B2C solution. And though there are examples of B2B perhaps which can be, but more like individual user, etc. Um, when it comes to B2B, I guess in any economy, they probably always are more camelish, whether even in the valley. I mean, even if you look at the story of Salesforce and the others, they actually were focused on making money from day one. They were actually focused on building a sustainable business model, not because I think the if you look at the definition of the not so good definition of a unicorn is where you kind of reach $1 billion valuation without even having a business model, right? I mean, that's the extreme end of it. While the camels, what we are saying is it's kind of built with sustainability in mind from day one. There is a business model, there is a way of making money. So I think it's also that I'll stop at that, saying that maybe the bad name for the unicorn probably comes from the B2C, where it's driven by hype rather than the business model. But B2B, which is where I am, and most of my business is actually focused on that. I see that that's the global norm to be more camel-ish, even if you have the ambition of becoming a unicorn.
I guess just to add to that, like I mean a lot of the stories and the media, for example, do focus on the B2C and the unicorn types, right? But the landscape in the Philippines is such that I believe, like at least looking at Kubo's data, right? Like about half of our startups, or more than half, right, are actually in B2B and maybe in the less sexy, ununicorny segments. And they were never designed to be unicorns. Like from day one, like the intent was, yes, they're innovating in a certain space. There is scalability there, but it wasn't sort of designed to be a hype beast unicorn type company. But I guess going back to your question about like what the difference is, or why should one be the other, I do strongly feel that unicorns are important, and I'm not here to kind of bash on unicorns, right? Like I think the unicorns serve an important signaling mechanism. At the end of the day, you do need that hype to get interest and excitement into an ecosystem. And thinking about the Philippines in particular, like we do want to have those success stories to generate like more interest from like quote mainstream investors or even international interest in what we're doing. And a couple of unicorns never hurts. But I think the fundamental strength of an ecosystem, or the health of the ecosystem, actually relies more on more of these camels, right? More of these sustainable businesses that again, were designed from day one to somehow make money. They also tend to be a lot more resilient, right? Like having a good war chest does give you buffer to fail, but at the same time, it can't possibly exist, right? Like that's why it's unicorn. It's mythical, like you can't build an entire ecosystem just on unicorns. At the end of the day, you need that stable of well thought out, well run businesses. And we're not reinventing the wheel here on what businesses do. Like at the end of the day, they have to make money, they have to provide return for shareholders, otherwise they cease to exist. So yeah, I guess I don't know, those were sort of my musings on that question. But yeah.
Paulo?
Same. If you just do very well in your business, the byproduct of that would be a unicorn status. It's again, a unicorn comes from the numerical value of $1 billion, right? But if you do very well as a camel or whatever animal or shape or form, you will eventually get to your success. and that would be a unicorn status. So just continue to do great work, and you're going to get there.
Thanks, Paulo. Wow, my mind's just going everywhere, and this might be our next thought piece. But I think I'd love to hear from you guys, and hopefully the audience could listen through on what specific factors during your journey you guys represent specific areas, B2B, B2C, B2B2C, as well as government, right? What are the specific factors that you felt has changed when it comes to creating growing camels or unicorns now? Because we're definitely past that stage of providing that awareness of what a startup is, right? There's definitely conversations. Oh, I know about startup because I've seen the Netflix series called Startup. I understand what you're doing. But I think in terms of factors, maybe if you guys could provide some insights on what were important factors that completely switch with appreciation with camels and unicorns for the future of the ecosystem.
Well, one thing, Carlo, I think that I would say that has changed for good of the ecosystem and the players is the mindset. I think a lot of players, buyers as well as sellers, meaning startups and the consumers of the technology or whatever they're offering, the mindset was not as global as what it is in the last 1 year. So meaning a lot of startups were focused on how far they can reach driving or something, or where they can go and meet someone, right? Whether it was a investor or whether it was a buyer, there was a lot of bias towards proximity. And from both sides. What I have seen in the last 1 year, well, when we built it, we were actually with the mind frame that if we start with sustainability in mind, but we built with the $1 billion and more valuation in mind also. So we knew the market has to be big enough to be going beyond Philippines, because first of all, it's going to be very difficult to grow a startup that depends purely on Philippines and get to a $100 million revenue or more, right? I mean, it's possible, but there are only so many segments, perhaps. So for most of us, it has to be wider. Now, when earlier you try to reach out, there was some need for a presence or partner or someone on the ground to make the sale, to close the deal. Somehow most decision makers are more open to talk to someone from offshore today, because even if they buy from someone in the neighborhood, they're probably not going to be physically there. So it's all Zoom, it's all Teams, and doesn't matter where they are from, as long you can get it done, you're good. And same I have seen with the investment. So for most of our fundraise so far, 90% maybe, or 80+% is actually from all over the place. The angel network and my own network across the world is where most of the money came in, rather than the local itself. So whether we would have gone for that or not, or whether that was the way to go, I am not 100% sure, but we kind of rolled with the situation. And that's basically what I would say, the mind shift that has happened. I mean, we are working as a company for more than 14 months without seeing each other in person. So I think that starts with that. And yeah, let's hear the others, their thoughts.
Anyone?
Well, I guess for me, it's just a difficulty in fundraising. And if you're always going to be dependent on funding rounds, it's not good for your health too, for your personal health, right? There's so much leverage and so much you could do if you're profitable. So I think for startups today, or maybe Carly could write about this. We should focus on sustainable and scalable startups. You still have to grow on a sustainable way. For us, like for Aid, I would say we're cruising for now at a little uptrend, but eventually down the road we'll still need to raise a bit to actually complete our product features. But if that doesn't happen, we have some cash to actually grow organically too. So we're not 100% dependent on it. Um, and one thing I noticed too is that for the investors that I've spoken to in the past, their I guess their risk threshold is so low today. I mean, they require certain metrics for you to hit before they can actually come in. And for the startup, they'll usually say, "But we need your funding for us to get there." So that's all the usual struggle, right? So I mean, for me, it boils down to funding, and for us, because of that event last year, we were forced to be sustainable, and I'm just so grateful that that happened.
I mean, I actually kind of forgot the full form of the original question, but I think the question was around like what changed, right, in terms of the mindsets and with everything that's going on. Um, okay, like I guess I think at the end of the day, like we're still in that process of striking a balance, finding, you know, it's almost like you do need risk capital in this industry. Like people need to be able to accept some level of risk, and that's something that's difficult. Like you asked about the government, for example, or even a lot of private investors, right? Like especially when you're looking at markets where I don't know, like a piece of land or a condo or something is like for sure gonna appreciate in value at this in a certain amount of time, right? Um, there has been like, and there continues to be some difficulty among founders to be able to secure the type of capital that they need to be able to grow, and you do need capital to grow. But at the same time, like I think there's also a bit more recognition around like, yes, we should be able to take a bit more risks, but also being realistic around, again, we're not reinventing the wheel on what a business is, right? Like you should have like those fundamentals in place, and thinking about the support organizations, or for example the government. Are we building companies that will last, right, that will create jobs, that will improve the economy and solve problems, because that's what we're trying to do, right? Like it's not just about raising valuations for the sake of it, but are we actually making a difference in people's lives? And I think what I'm also liking about, I mean, our particular panel today, or the founders we invited today, they're solving very real kind of problems. They're helping small businesses. They're, in the case of Paolo, helping us survive, I guess. So again, like yes, we should be supporting our startups and giving them that hype, right, to help them, to propel them. But at the same time, we have to be very conscious about, are they really solving problems or helping people? And for me, that's really the most important thing. Maybe this should have been obvious, right? But I think some of us were sort of stuck in a world where we were, the sexy kind of side of Silicon Valley or whatever kind of took over. But um, if anything, things like this pandemic has sort of taught me, and I think forced all of us to reflect and kind of pare back into what really matters. And this is what startups should be doing, and what our innovators do, right? It's they solve problems, they create impact in people's lives, and um, you know, if anything, this whole conversation is about going back to the basics and things that should have been obvious to us in the first place.
Thanks,
You know,
Scott.
I
Go ahead, Arp.
sorry. I would just wanted to mention that while we said all of this, what we should not forget is being camel doesn't mean we're letting go of the ambition of reaching 100 million or 500 million dollar. What we are talking about is the main difference is it's creating value to reach there rather than creating valuation to reach there. I think that's the basic point.
Agree.
Fantastic. Well said. That's super well said.
There you go. And that's it, guys. I'm just kidding. And so if anyone just tuned in, thank you so much for joining us. We are currently talking about growing camels versus unicorns. And currently we have a comment from David Marquez over at our Facebook Live saying, you know, we should support both. And if there are unicorns to be, let's rally behind them to be a beacon for others. Definitely a good point. But if there are camels, let's prepare them for the journey too. So for the panel, I have a curveball for you. I was reading the topic, growing camels versus unicorns. Listen well. Now let's turn around this question and think more of this. We're in Southeast Asia. There's definitely a lot of regional investors looking at the Philippines now. What's interesting about the Philippines is we have regional unicorns already dominating the market. We're not seeing that with all the other Southeast Asian countries. They have something homegrown. However, we're seeing the government, private sector, everyone rallying together to create this ecosystem to be its own formidable entity. So I guess my real question is, how do we protect camels over the regional unicorns? So that's my curveball to you guys.
Well, you know, any business that is fundamentally strong and has a business model to compete shouldn't have a problem. In fact, with us, we are competing head on with existing billion-dollar companies by choosing a segment, by choosing a narrow segment where we can make a difference where they cannot go in. We have clients in Australia, in India. We have clients in India. Can you imagine that? That's a full of startups and unicorns and everything. And we went there and we have been getting accounts over there. So I don't think it has something to do with the presence of other players. In fact, if anything, I think having more players in the market and more of them entering Philippines probably is a good thing. As long, you know, we're not just doing a Me Too replica of something else. It's actually going to help out.
I think
I don't think you don't necessarily need sort of like protectionist policies. You know, I think it's the job of the entrepreneur to come up with their defensible mode, right? Like, and at the same time, it's also the job of the entrepreneur to kind of do the research. You know, if there's already like a massive kind of market dominant player, you know, it's like, I don't know, business school 101, right? Like Porter's 5 forces, don't go in that market. But if you are able to deliver value in something that where you feel that you can create something that scales, and you know, I think I am personally of the view that there's still so many spaces where it's possible. It's not like, you know, you have like the dominant players in many sectors. There's still so many fields, like, you know, thinking about, you know, agriculture, education, you know, a lot of sustainability and kind of saving our planet from inevitable doom, right? Like there's so many spaces that startups should still be able to innovate and create, like, you know, not just billion-dollar but trillion-dollar companies, if you ask me. So yeah, like I don't necessarily think it's necessary for us to put in place you know, protectionist quote unquote policies, but at the same time, for the people that are there and are working on important things, so I believe our role is to make sure that there's an enabling environment where they can thrive and they're not like sort of crushed at the get-go, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean, founders keep hustling, and at the same time, you know, like it is important that there is that space, right, where inevitably it's going to be difficult in the beginning, and not just in the beginning but all throughout, and that like that there is some support system out there so that there's as level a playing field as could be, right? From a practical point of view. But that's my take. And Apollo, what do you think?
Perfect. Well said. I guess for health, it's a bit different, a bit more difficult. One thing I noticed with other players in the region, bigger players in the region, when they try to come in the Philippines, they always say, why is health this way here? It's different in Singapore, it's different here. Why is it in the Philippines it's different? So that local flavor, that taste, it's always a struggle for them to understand. So what ends up is like maybe a collaboration, maybe a partnership of somebody who's already in it. We could work together too. It doesn't mean like this is my space, get out of here, right? I'd also love to learn from them if they have something that I think will create more value for A2. Definitely, we could work together. That's my take.
So to sum it up, competition is healthy. It really pushes the envelope. It's good for our country. Pandemic wise, COVID really pushed the boundaries on what it means to accelerate the ecosystem. There's definitely some bad there and good, but maybe we'll do that question. I guess what changed? What changed during the pandemic? We'd love to hear your thoughts in different aspects of the ecosystem before we go to live Q&A.
Maybe I'll start with this one. What changed? Obviously, we're all online, but I mean, I think a lot of both our anecdotal sort of experience and the data has borne this out, right? Like digital adoption has accelerated. I think it's actually been an opportunity in many startups in terms of just, and maybe Paolo and Arup will have something to say about this, but from what you've observed, for many companies, it's actually been like a once in a lifetime opportunity in a way, right? Like most kind of disruptive events have turned out to be the sort of catalyst for creating big new kind of businesses or paradigm shifts in terms of how people work and operate. And I can't imagine like an event bigger than this one, at least in our lifetimes, in terms of like the opportunities it creates for new businesses and that room for growth. For investors, what you have observed is that they are a bit more cautiously optimistic, right? Like again, they are looking at not just companies that are able to lop up users by just fundraising constantly. If you're looking at even in the Philippines specifically, like the companies that have fundraised most recently, these are all businesses that are at least cash flow positive. They're definitely not just user subsidized kind of growth companies, and in some ways it's brought a bit of sanity or maybe sobered up the ecosystem in some ways. And I guess also a third thing, I do feel that in some ways like this pandemic has made people kind of look at the local ecosystems and local businesses a bit more. So yes, of course, that idea of like being a global company and like regional growth, that's still definitely part of the equation and it's still very important. But I do feel that it has, in some ways, like forced us to look at what are solutions that are going to be able to solve our problems in our own context right now. And those are some of the things that I've seen have changed, from, I guess, the work that we're doing at Kubo. So yeah, I'd love to hear from our founders though.
On our side, for the local ecosystem, what I have seen is a lot of businesses are now forced to think digital. For the last year, there was like state of panic. So a lot of purchases were delayed. But I think come 2021, there was a realization that we got to live with this, and we cannot just hope it will go away by 6 months, 3 months. And now people after the first quarter is realizing maybe it's going to be there till next year or even longer. So with that, one thing that has changed is a lot of the businesses are now having their next generation being more involved with the business, the COO, child of owner, and the child of owners are actually much more open to technology. So from our current pipeline of B2B leads or engagements, or even the deals that has closed, a lot of those are being led by the COOs. They are kind of being more involved in the business now. They are now being they're now thinking technology, and the parents can kind of depend on them, because I think they're at a stage where they don't want to decide on technology, so they're now asking the kids to, like, okay, you run with this. So at least, even if the business is traditional, but they're giving them something that will keep them interested and excited. So which is good for the ecosystem, startups, as well as for the businesses themselves.
I think for the founder ecosystem too is that there's a lot of resilience and help that we've received from other founders, from our suppliers, from our stakeholders. So other founders, me and the other founders would connect just to make sure our sanity is intact. We share ideas. We give some ideas for our supply chain. We create resilience by paying these doctors on time, properly, making sure everybody's well fed, making sure everyone can work properly. Same for the other side; they're able to pay aid properly too on time. So a lot of support we see during this pandemic, and we're definitely grateful for that. And it's very good for the ecosystem, because especially for the startup ecosystem, because we're all growing together. We're all trying to be camels. There will be hundreds of camels in the Philippines, and I think it's not bad if we have 100 camels, and eventually maybe unicorns will come up from these camels, right?
Thanks, everyone.
Horn, right?
The hump will slowly go down.
If you think about it, camels are from the desert, and if they go all around mindlessly, or at least somewhere in the desert, maybe one camel is trying to find the magic lamp and find the genie, and they probably would want to be a unicorn. Maybe it could be a metaphorical case.
Carlo, the reality is unicorns are mythical, camels are real.
Yeah. I'm actually starting to look like a camel too. Somebody said I look like a camel.
Okay, so we'll transition towards Q&A. I guess we'll do some lightning rounds here just to accommodate all. There's definitely a question on, can you name notable camels and potential unicorns? I'm a VC. I'm gonna step back and be neutral. Go ahead.
I'm also. I feel like I should.
Yeah, no, we are left with what? Are we going to name ourselves? Or...
You should.
Let me put it this way, though. There's a lot of good fundraising news in the Philippines lately. I think that's not, we do sort of annual surveys with PwC and Foxmont and all these guys, right, about what are the needs of the founders. Fundraising was always above and beyond, close to 90%, the biggest gap. But I think from what we're seeing recently, the challenges are actually shifting. So there are definitely a lot of potential unicorns in that sense, right? All of these fundraising rounds are sort of upping the valuations of a lot of companies. And so, yeah, I don't feel comfortable at this point kind of talking about specific ones, but I think we know who's in the news, right, about our potential unicorns. And in terms of camels, I think there are some very good camels on this screen at the moment. but I think that that's the whole thing with camels as well, right? Like a lot of them are the unsung heroes of our ecosystem, and you should be paying more attention to them just because they're really the backbone of the startup ecosystem as we know it.
I think, Carlo, if you want to try to identify the potential unicorns, you have to look at probably two things. One is the potential market that they are serving, and if they are ready to go global or already going global. Because I think if you want to reach, again, going back to that valuation, a couple of $100 million revenue, purely on local market would be very difficult to attain. So those that are in a model that can reach out outside easily, can create that partner or direct distribution network, and they're already doing it, and that would be probably one indicator of potential unicorns. Of course, there is so many things that has to happen for it to reach there, but there are so many other which are sustainable cash flow business locally, and it doesn't, not everyone has to reach $100 million, right? I mean, a good $10 million is a good good business, can feed a lot of people, can help a lot of economy. So I think, those are there. Maybe that's not a game the Silicon Valley and the other investors want to be in, but not everyone has to be there, right?
Exactly. I mean, most founders, they have a, unicorn sticker in their wall somewhere, and and we'll continue to support and help each other just to reach that dream. Again, we all have hope that someday there will be one, but at the same time, $10 million, like Arup said, is also not a bad deal, right?
Yeah, those are great points, and it's all about optics, right? If you, as a founder, you're happy with your mission, you're happy with what you're doing, that's pretty good. I think everything else is a bonus. So props to you guys for providing these really important, logical and practical insights. Let's go to the next question. And while we were talking, I was checking the news. There have been some great news coming along the past quarter. Today we have a few funding round announcement that just came out. There are actually two. So Xenia was one. The other one is actually Fortuna Cools. And this leads to the question with Achilles on, is there opportunity for green startups in the Philippines? Yes, there's definitely there definitely is. So I guess maybe here, if you have any comments here, I think there are definitely a few indicators that the Philippines is having its moment. One, we're seeing a lot more corporate VCs coming out locally. Regional VCs are actually looking in more. And then, of course, government doubling down. So maybe comments there if you feel like there are things I left out.
I mean, ESG investing isn't just hype and hot, and it totally is. But like I think the thesis behind not just Cuba, but like I always felt about the Philippine startup ecosystem is we were solving real world problems, and like it wasn't just photo filters or whatever, right? Like we were making important things, and like I think there's been a lot of also news recently or kind of negative press around, we're generating so many kind of unwanted plastics and releasing them into the oceans, or, the Philippines is, unsustainable kind of fishing practices, what have you, right? Like there's so many kind of areas of opportunity that are both aligned with what's good for the planet, but also make sense from a financial perspective. And what's being funded now, I think also demonstrates this, but I think if there were an area where Filipino startups could compete, I always felt like it was in solving these sort of thorny real world problems with the notion that there are more places in the world that look like Manila or look like CDO, right, than Silicon Valley or Palo Alto or what have you. And if we can figure out like how to make it work here or solve these kinds of problems that we acutely feel, then the potential for it is global. So yeah, absolutely. Like it's so hot now, and there's definitely a lot of interest, not just from private investors, but even the government, of course, and even people like individual investors, right, that are looking to kind of diversify their portfolio into more of these things that, putting your money behind like things that you also believe in as people. So yeah, that's my take on that.
I guess, Carlos, startup founders really do not go by the levels. They go by where their heart and mind leads them. So, whether it's green or white or blue, it is what it is. If it gets them going, because getting and building a startup it's some kind of insanity in itself. It's not logical. If you analyze it through logic, you shouldn't do it. There's so many other ways to be happy and make money. Who needs to go through this torture to kind of change things? So it's something that needs to drive beyond just levels or just money or just things around there. So now, like Kat was talking about, we got a lot of problems here, right? I mean, there's no shortage of problems. So whichever problem catches whose fancy and attention, they will run with it. I guess the ones that can make a difference is the funding. So, I mean, a lot of people will run with different problems and different solutions, but those that can sustain and grow and reach somewhere will need at least some level of support and funding. So, I mean, like the grassroots level support, like Kubo and IdeaSpace has been doing for the years, that has been great. And you can see the results already around. And we need more of that in various levels. Because, even if you want to be a camel, you cannot do that without at least that initial start. There's a nurturing environment needed for the 6 months, 12 months before you can even try to be somewhat cash generating and whatnot.
Even a nonprofit has to be sustainable, right? I mean, that's it. I mean, it has to survive. It has to be sustainable. And to circle back on what Arup said, the startup world is very uncertain, and it's very hard for founders that have sacrificed so much to build something. Maybe Kat can develop a founder support funding group. Because behind the scenes, it can look like a unicorn from outside, but you don't know the struggles and the challenges the founders are actually taking just to get this up, right? So that's another topic.
Oh wow! Maybe we should have another call. Just have another audience, right? Different topic, same panel. Maybe we'll go for the last question, and then we'll wrap it up with your last word. So it seems like we've gotten to this visual representation of what it represents to be a camel or unicorns. We are not against unicorns. We are looking at what we should be learning from unicorns and how to be ethically and practical for the future, right? So maybe from your experiences, fundraising, solving problems, what would be an important piece of experience you could share to the audience that you can actually say that made us a camel?
Bite size. I think that was the learning I had in the fundraising in the last 14 months, because earlier the concept was whenever we thought of fundraising, we thought we'll raise a chunk and we'll be over with. For us, what has changed is we came to be aware of this process called rolling fundraise, where you don't try to hit the $1 million right up front, but you go with smaller chunks. So now I broke down the block size to $20,000, and that opened it up to a lot of my friends and connections and others who are into investing, let's say stock market and all. And they said, hey, okay, cool, let's go in. So I think that was a mind shift on our side. Instead of trying to look for 100,000, 500,000 blocks to raise, we say, let's go with smaller blocks, 20,000 each. And if someone wants to go for more, and there has been, they go for like 3 blocks, 5 blocks, and that's perfectly fine. So I think that's one key change that has happened and that helped us move forward in the last 12 months.
I totally agree with Arup. We could call it milestone based. We could call it, it's you don't need that big chunk today. One thing also I've learned is that maybe when you close a round, think of it like this can be actually your last before you could go IPO. It's you don't look for like a series A to E or to Z before an IPO or before an exit. This might be it, and you'll do your very best. Since you have that mindset and you don't have any other choice, you'll be surprised. You'll give it your all to make this thing fly.
I mean, I really like what Paulo said. I guess this question doesn't apply to us as directly. Yes, we do have our own sort of funding struggles, but I don't think that's the topic for today. I think from what I've learned or observed, it's really about, again, and I think I started the talk with this also, no two startups are alike in terms of the type of support that they need. But at least what I can say is, the bottom line is we want to help our founders build good businesses that can solve problems, that can, help them fulfill their own, aspirations, create jobs, create wealth for everyone, for their investors. And like, yes, like, I guess some companies are designed maybe work better to be unicorns, right? And some are more intended to be more camel-like. Like, people adapt to their environment, not people, rather, like, natural selection kind of provides like that you adapt to your environment. And our environment, the reality is that, again, there are probably going to be more camels or the equivalent, right? Like the ibis or the kalabaw or whatever, what you want to call it, than the unicorns. But there is also room for that bit of magic, that unicorn, right? And I think as investors, as enablers, we want to celebrate these success stories, help them the way that we can, hopefully make, that occasional 10x or more return when we're able to. But looking at it holistically, like, there's so much room, so many more problems to be solved, and really, like, lots of jobs, money, impact that can be created by camels as well. So, like, there's a place in the ecosystem for all of these businesses to coexist. I am very much for bayanihan, like, as our mantra at Cuba does say. So let's just support our businesses, be customers, invest, do all of these things. And, as we do that, I have full confidence that we're only going to see bigger and better things from this ecosystem. And I'm putting my money behind it too. And I know Carlo is as well.
Literally. So I guess we'll do the last words here. Anything you want the ecosystem to hear, founders or maybe possible investors or just enablers that are listening. Anything you want to just to wrap up the conversation, and it's definitely been insightful even for me.
So I have been doing this.
Discouraged.
Sorry. I was just saying that, I've been at this for 20 years now. The first startup that I tried getting into in the 2000. The reality is we have come a long way as a country, as a startup ecosystem. In fact, we started our formal efforts with Spring PH 2012. And since then, till now, we have come a long way also. So, if you look at the history, except a few outliers, even globally, to build a unicorn, it takes 6, 8, 10 years. I mean, people just hear about the overnight success once it gets a lot of press or something. So we still are not there, because a lot of the startups that you see in the market today has been less than 5 years in the game. So give it a little time. We'll have our own unicorns too. I think that's one key thing. And for those that has not done any startup yet and trying to feel if this is the time to do, I would say this is the best time ever to do a startup. So don't waste any time. Get into it, find your co-founders and get at it. There's enough money everywhere. Don't worry if you can't get an angel locally, you can find one internationally. Today to call someone on Zoom is as easy whether they're in Quezon City or the other side of the world. So do that. Find your contact, get your network, and get at it.
Awesome. I'm in my 5th year as a first-time startup founder, and I've never had more white hair in my life. I had more black hair 5 years ago. One thing I've learned and realized is that entrepreneurship, whatever shape or form, small business, startup, it's all about commitment. And you'll continue to beat that stone, mold it, and try to hopefully get to that shape that you want that stone to be soon, and find that proper home for that stone. I mean, I wish everybody all the best and good luck. And for this pandemic, I mean, I've never seen so much entrepreneurs in my life, down to our village, to selling stuff. And it's just so nice to see that. And Filipinos are actually very creative. And if you need support and mentorship, Kubo is the best place to go.
Yeah.
Thanks for that transition to me, Paolo. But yeah, absolutely. Like, we're here for you guys. Like, bottom line, I know the struggle is real. Hashtag. So for all of the, I guess, struggling camels out there, like, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, there are many resources out there for you as well. You're not at this alone. I think that's really important to keep in mind. And don't be discouraged. Like, that's the bottom line. We do need all of you to hustle, and maybe that's asking for a lot. And sometimes it doesn't feel like the fairy tale is happening for you, and it's happening for some other unicorns out there. But at the end of the day, like, and I think this was also mentioned by Arup earlier. I think a lot of us, there are probably easier ways to make money, like, if that's the only thing that drives us. But I think all of us are in this for a much bigger purpose. And, and it is maybe a small-ish community, but definitely a very passionate one. And there is help for you out there if you're a camel and you are seeking your oasis. And we wish you to find your magic as well, right? Like, to become that unicorn, to transform. But even if you don't, there is room for all of these companies. You're much needed in building what this country can be. And we can be great, like, it's nothing to be ashamed about. Camels are not just the next hot thing, like, to suggest that it's a trend, but it's really what will propel this ecosystem into the future. So I will close there, and www.ku.com.ph if you want to sign up and if you're a startup. So yeah, back to you, Carlo.
Thank you so much, everyone. And that really wraps up our conversation. And just to sum it up, we need to look at values. We need to look at, I think there's definitely a course correction with what is happening with the pandemic. It's also an opportunity to start anew. We've seen what's essential. We don't need to go to traffic. We can do business online. things have changed for the better, and it will be even better over the course of the next few years. And the Philippines is definitely primed for that opportunity. So if you're a founder, an enabler, if you're a VC, if you're just starting out, if you're a student, please tune in, read, and listen to the stories of these founders and enablers. There's definitely a lot. The ecosystem has never been as active as ever before. And just to sum it up, I think when we created this thought piece, the last paragraph was, if more investors and founders champion the same values, the Philippine startup community may find itself not only with a working ecosystem, but one that builds long-lasting businesses. We may not be ready for unicorns, but with the Filipinos' ingenuity, resilience, and discarte, camels may be what we will find. And I think for me, from this talk, I need to update that and say it's already happening. We're bullish. Let's do it. And I'll have Nelly bring it in to wrap it up. So, guys, thank you again. Round of applause for all you. And hopefully everyone listening enjoyed. Nelly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carlo, and first to our panelists. On behalf of Kubo Innovation Hub, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us, those who are tuning in from YouTube or Facebook. Thank you to our partners, Job Street Philippines and Youth Business International. Of course, our panelists, Kat, Paolo, Arop, and Carlo for moderating. But what is a QLITAN without a groovy? So let us take a cutie photo before we officially end. And at Kubo, we do a cutie pose. So on 3, you have to strike your cutest pose, okay? And then say cuties. All right, panelists, are you ready? Okay, cutie pose on 3. 1, 2, 3, cuties.
Cuties.
All right. Again, thank you so much to everyone watching. I'll just give a quick rundown on our upcoming opportunities. But again, thank you to our panelists. Keep safe and continue what you're doing. Just a rundown on our upcoming opportunities that were mentioned earlier. Please do sign up for our workshop in partnership with Facebook. It is entitled Creating Content and Effective Engagement Strategies. This will be held on May 27 from 3 to 4:30. Again, this is open to all and it's also for free. So if you're interested, please register at the link provided on the screen. Our second opportunity coming up soon is the Alibaba Netpreneur Training Program. All right, so this opportunity is also free and open to entrepreneurs who have been operating for at least 2 years. Again, the deadline is on June 20, so do submit your applications before then. Another opportunity that you guys might be interested in is the Singapore Airlines App Challenge. The deadline is on June 30. So this program or this opportunity invites innovators to join forces with SIA or the Singapore Airlines to lead change in the aviation and travel industry. We also have an ongoing Kubo Entrepreneurial Support Survey. So kindly fill that out until May 31, and 50 lucky survey respondents will receive 300 pesos worth of Grab credits. And last announcements for today's QLITAN is for female founders looking for support and community. Do join our Startup Unite program. You can check out more details on our website at kubo.com/ph. And again, thank you so much to those who tuned in. We hope you learned a lot in tonight's session entitled Growing Camels and Unicorns. See you at our next QLITAN, and until then, keep safe and good night. Thank you, everyone.